All right. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to chat through AI use for chiefs of staff and all things AI in the C-suite. We've got Lawrence Coburn here from Ambient AI. We've got a few other folks listed as panelists. We've got 𝗪𝗲𝗃𝗏. Offsite is helping us throw this webinar free of charge. So they're going to share for a couple minutes about all things amazing offsite. So you'll hear from Jared for just a couple minutes when we get going here. Um, and then Lawrence and I will dive into a great conversation about the state of AI right here in 2025 and what we're looking at this year. And specifically tools and ways to approach AI as chiefs of staff and senior executive assistants and folks in the C-suite. So we're so happy you're here. We've got 250 folks and counting, almost 1,100 registered for this event, which is absolutely incredible. If you know me, usually we start these events with something about food. What kind of food are you looking forward to? What'd you make for lunch? What are you doing for dinner? But we're going to be a little bit more on theme today. And I would love to hear from each of you. And you can take some time. You can add this in throughout the conversation later in the chat if you want to think about it, or just like pop it in now. I want to hear from all of our attendees a few things. So the first question is open-ended. Throw whatever you'd like in the chat. It is really around what are you using AI for? What's your favorite AI use case, and which tool are you using for that use case? So it might be something like I'm writing content or I'm ghostwriting for my leader. So I'm using ChatGPT often for that reason. So think about your favorite AI use case and the tool that goes with it. And please start popping those in the chat. Somebody put something in the chat for me. Let me see if the chat is even on. We might have to fix our chat settings here. It looks like our chat settings might be disabled. Okay, we'll see if we can fix that. If not, we will skip our chat. We'll skip kind of icebreaker here, and we'll just go straight into things. But looks like we're getting up to 300 attendees. Some housekeeping reminders. We have, and it looks like some folks are using the Q&A box for this, so that's fine. We have a Q&A box at the bottom of the webinar. That's where you're going to put questions. So I think on our last Nova chat, we disabled the chat box just to help keep things a little bit more streamlined and focused. So that's probably why, but use the Q&A box for questions, and we will dive into questions if we have time at the end. So we only have an hour today, so we may not get to all of our questions, but we'll keep track of them and see if we can answer them later down the road. Okay, so we're going to get going here in a minute. I would love to introduce you to Jared. So Jared is Offsite's founder, and he's going to share a bit about Offsite and how it can benefit many, many, many of you on the call. So take it away, Jared.
Thanks so much for having me, and great to see so many people here. I'm another founder, CEO that's thinking a lot about AI, so I'm really excited to listen in to the chat myself. I've been around the Ambient team a few times at other chief of staff community events. One thing that AI can't really help you with that well quite yet is offsite planning. And so that's what me and my team do. You can head to offsite.com, make a free account, and we can help you in one of two ways. The first is we made a free marketplace like Airbnb, where you can find offsite vendors, including one of over 1,000 venues from around the world. We've partnered with Hilton, Hyatt, Accor, Marriott, all the major hotel brands, boutique and large. So you could save up to 40% on a room block, meeting space, food and beverage, things like that when you're planning a team retreat. Then we're adding all different vendor types like swag providers, photographers, videographers, and so forth. So you can do that for free, offsite.com. We also do end-to-end offsite planning as a service. So you pay us one flat fee per person per offsite, and we do everything with you and for you. We've done this hundreds of times all around the world for remote, buffer, reforge, guilds, groups of 10 up to 1,000. So really excited to be partnering with Nova on this. Excited to learn myself from the presentation. And just to give Nova some credit and some love, if you do make a free account with Offsite, use the link in the chat so that we know you're coming from Nova, and we'll take extra special care of you. That's it for me. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Jared. You will see more of Jared. Jared is Nova's 2025 sponsor, so we're really happy to partner with such a awesome human and awesome company. So we appreciate you. Um, okay,
Thank
well,
you.
with that, I'm going to share just a little bit about Nova Chief of Staff for those of you who are not super familiar with us. Nova Chief of Staff is the premier destination for Chief of Staff development and education. We launched our Chief of Staff certification course about 18 months ago, and we're getting very close to 1,000 students across 30 countries. We have also an AI ChatGPT course for chiefs of staff. And if you're interested in our courses, you can check us out. We do bundle if you're looking at both courses. But at this point, we have a special code for anybody interested in enrolling from this webinar to our chief of staff certification course. And that code is AI150, and we'll put the link in the chat for you as well. But check us out. That's it for us from Nova. We're going to dive into all things AI in the C-suite. And Lawrence, I would love if you could introduce yourself and your company.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. And thanks for having me. Thanks to Jared. Jared's an awesome guy. Offsite's an awesome company. So my name is Lawrence Coburn. I'm the co-founder of a company called Ambient. We are building an AI teammate for the Office of the CEO. We work with chiefs of staff, senior EAs, and heads of strategy. So thanks for the opportunity to be here, Maggie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to dive in. Our chat has been disabled for this webinar, so you are more than welcome to use the Q&A box to let us know anything. We're working on a little survey to collect information from our attendees on some of the questions I was talking about earlier. So that'll come in a few minutes. But Lawrence, I want to just start with, we've talked a couple times, let's see, 2-3 times publicly over the last year or so about kind of the environment of AI and the landscape of where we're at right now and how it affects the C-suite. I would love to know, just first and foremost, what should people be thinking about in terms of AI use as we start 2025?
Yeah, so I have 6 big trends for you that we're watching. So things that have changed in my mind since 2024 and 2025. I'm going to start banging them out, and you can pause me and say, let's hold on some of these, but
Okay.
I'm going to start kind of like industry level, foundation level, top down level. So the first thing to know is that if 2024 was about open AI, yes, early adopters were using Claude, we're using Gemini, we're using Llama. There are now 5 credible frontier foundation models. Like, why should you care about that? Because this is ubiquitous technology. Any organization with scale and resources can build these foundation models, not you all, but like big technology companies. And that means the costs are coming down. So that's the first big trend to watch. The second thing is, if 2024 was about text and was about chat, man, 2025 is multimodal, right? So these models can now see, they can now speak, they can now create video, they can create images, they can now reason, hold that thought. So these foundation models are becoming more human-like in what they can do. So don't just think about asking questions and getting responses. Think about analyzing documents, uploading presentations for context. All of this stuff is in reach now. Okay, third big trend. I'm going to keep rolling, Maggie. Stop me if I'm going on too much.
Please go through them. I think that's great.
So this idea of reasoning, like one of the things that some of you all noticed in 2024, I'm sure, was that you get these quick kind of truthy responses to questions, maybe some hallucinations mixed in. The way that these models are processing queries and prompts now is changing. There's a slow AI and reasoning approach. So you'll notice a little delay in responses, but now the answers are much more thoughtful. They're much more human-like, and the way you have to prompt is changing too. So that a lot of the prompting skills you learned in 24 have to be refreshed. We can do that in another session, but it's lots of cool stuff there. Okay. I'm going to bang out the last 3 big trends here, but like, if 2024 was the year of the AI assistant, 2025 is the year of the AI teammate. We are starting to see real mainstream adoption. I think AI note-taking was the runaway hit of 2024, and now 25% of all virtual meetings will have an AI assistant by the end of the year, according to Gartner. And then the last thing that I'll say that you all should have eyes on, when I spoke to you a year ago, what I set as an ROI goal for you was, can you save 5 hours per week? I believe the expectations are going up for ROI. I think you all as chiefs of staff, founders, senior EAs should be thinking about, can AI help me make better decisions? So I'll stop there, but there's so much happening right now, and it's all leading to a crazy 2025.
Yeah, that's exciting. So when you think about kind of your expertise in the AI world, I was joking before we came on that if we thought about kind of the range of 1 to 5, and I'm a 3 of a kind of a daily user, but absolutely not an AI expert. And then we've got folks probably on the line here who are 1s, maybe they're barely using, here to learn more, using a bit. 2s, maybe they're using once a week or two. And then we've got 4s and 5s kind of really around that deep AI expertise. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Lawrence, on kind of where you sit, how you consider, you were in obviously this incredible founder of an AI company. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you feel about your AI expertise. And then I'd love to hear about how you consider just like our population, the folks on this call, the folks that you're running into day to day. I definitely think last year, the majority of people on our calls like this were brand new users, just a bit interested, trying to figure out how to incorporate AI into their week. I think that's definitely changed within the last year, but I'd love to hear kind of just your casual thoughts on where's the population at this point in our circles of non-experts as well.
Yeah, I've done something like 400 interviews of chiefs of staff, so I have a pretty good sense of kind of the spectrum of skills. I think it is very rare that I run into a chief of staff that is not at least experimenting. And so by experimenting, I mean they probably have the ChatGPT desktop app installed. They're probably running sort of bespoke tasks, pointing bespoke tasks. Help me prep for a meeting, help me draft this meeting, help me think about kind of possible solutions for this problem. So I put that sort of in the early, but I'm definitely not dismissive. If you're doing those things every day, asking help from an AI on tasks that you are working on, you are doing the right things. You're on the right track. I think the most advanced chiefs of staff that I'm hearing from are running the task forces for their organization to look at AI enhancements, productivity gains, department by department. So they are cross-department like a good chief of staff, and they are spearheading these initiatives. Mm-hmm. The most advanced chiefs of staff are building tools. And you can build tools without being a programmer now using AI tools. Like there's a tool called 𝗪𝗲 where you can program apps in English. But the best, the most advanced chiefs of staff that I'm seeing, and the recs that I'm seeing, the job recs that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing these too, Maggie, particularly for Silicon Valley chiefs of staff, is that you have to be technical enough to start writing your own little AI-powered apps. So that is super advanced. I'm not all the way there yet, though I am building apps in 𝗪𝗲. But I think that's kind of the range, like doing one-off tasks, ChatGPT, to you're building your own apps with some of these AI-powered development tools.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So it's making me think a little bit like kind of one of your middle bullets here of kind of the reasoning changing and the prompting changing.
Yeah.
It's making me think a little bit about my own AI use and a lot of the conversations in circles of mine of like, which tools do you use for what and why? And even just a few months ago, I had some folks, and I've seen this as well. I'm sure, many of you on the call have, but ChatGPT sometimes gets their data wrong, and they maybe they give you a stat, but the data's not referenced. That's changed in the last week or two. It's completely changed. I think that I was directed to Perplexity as a better option for some of the more data heavy, like research fact-based information I was looking for versus ChatGPT. And now, it's changing. And it just makes me think about your first point, which is the competition of having 5 major LLMs, right? That is driving price down and increasing the quality and the speed to change of those companies and apps to make sure that they're the best and most used. Are most people, using probably like one major LLM? Are we in a period where everybody's experimenting with all of them and a clear winner is going to come through? Like, kind of where do you feel in those major apps that we're going?
Yeah, and just like you said, there's 5 credible frontier foundation models now, and you should be exploring each of them. I don't know about you all, but I don't want to spend $20 a month times 5. I'd rather just spend $20 per month. So I'm still an open AI user, but I'm definitely exploring some of the other models. I I don't know. I think we are going to start to see kind of different models emerge. We're already seeing it. Just like you said, different foundation models are better at different domains. So particularly if you're a deep sort of researcher, you should know which model maps to your area of domain. I think for us, which are by nature, we do all the lanes as chiefs of staff, and founders, I think that like any of those big five are going to be great. One other thing about performance gains, I don't know if you all remember this, but sometime back in November, there was a series of articles saying that the AI gains were slowing down. And they were talking about a very particular thing, which is one of the things that's driving AI gains is just more training data. So there's this mad arms race to acquire more training data. This is requiring a lot of energy. The Washington Post is now saying 17% of all energy consumption in the United States is going to be consumed by data centers by the year 2030. So this was starting to slow down both by energy constraints, but also data constraints. Where the performance gains are coming from now are this reasoning technique. And so just by changing the technique that these foundation models process queries and prompts, the pace of innovation and performance is actually not slowing down. The foundation models are just finding other ways to keep that rate of acceleration going. So if you've heard in the back of your mind, oh, the pace of improvement is slowing down, they were talking about a very particular thing, but actually the applications are not slowing down at all.
And what are those five? And if you have a key, like a phrase or two for each, that'd be helpful too. So people can say, oh, I'm going to check that out for this use case.
Sure. Let me bang through the actual model names and I can talk through who the companies are. But it's GPT-4o is still sort of setting the pace. We'll go from there. We have llama, which is obviously out of Facebook. The model is llama 3.1405B. We have Gemini 1.5 Pro out of Google. We have Claude 3.5 Sonnet out of Anthropic. And we have Grok 2 out of Elon, out of Twitter, or X, as they say.
What's the name of that last one?
Grok. Grok 2 is the model.
Okay, I hadn't heard about that one. Okay, and so those are the top five. And are there?
Yeah, there's more that are close. There's one out of France called Mistral, M-I-S-T-R-L, which is sort of the European horse in the race. Cool. And there's probably another 3 or 4 that are knocking at the door in terms of kind of the real frontier tech that are performing at near human levels.
And Lawrence, it's totally okay if you kind of know or don't know these things, but do you have some key use cases for each that folks could focus on between the five?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some sort of kind of like superficial sort of like Claude is a little better at math, but I'm not ready to go kind of eat down each domain. Some of it gets pretty technical in terms of like research domains.
Yep, fair enough. Yeah, I'd said earlier that I was pointed to Perplexity for some of the, the data, but I think that as each emerges as a bit of a winner in one way, the others are going to, advance. And just like I was explaining a couple of weeks ago, ChatGPT is now referencing all of the stats it's giving me with links, like very, very well. So I think it's just going to continue changing extremely quickly. So from a use case scenario, can we talk through some of the main use cases and things that chiefs of staff are doing with AI in terms of their day-to-day job? What are chiefs of staff using AI for?
Yeah, I'm going to give you kind of a very high level, kind of memorable clip where I think if 2024 is about tasks, 2025 is about workflows. So stringing tasks together, setting a goal, having an actual workflow in mind. There's 4 sort of workflows that we're tracking in the office of the CEO. And I wish this was more interactive so I could see kind of show of hands. But the first one is, I think, the farthest along. We call it the rhythm of business workflows. So this is the prep work, the execution, the follow-up, particularly around the meetings cadence of your business. So this is everything from kind of your weekly staff meetings to your town halls, to your offsites, check out Jared's company, by the way, to your board meetings. So the big rituals that drive the operating cadence, there's workflows around each of those. And I think most of the chiefs of staff that I talk to are using AI to assist in some of those workflows. The second big block of workflows I would just characterize as special projects. These tend to be highly confidential, highly impactful, high stakes, a lot of balls in the air, very complicated. Think things like financings, things like acquisitions, opening a new office in another region. So this is an area which I think is one to watch. When we get to the demo portion, Taylor's going to show some new tools that enable help with these kinds of special projects. The third workflow, and it's not really a workflow, but we think it matters a lot in the office of the CEO, is the personal relationships of the CEO. Like, one of the things that can move the dial for a company is that the CEO is connected, right? And there aren't a lot of tools. Like, there are CRMs out there, but CEOs don't use CRMs. They're not updating HubSpot, right? What they use is email. So today, the personal CRM of the CEO is email. And I think there's things that can be done with email. There's a company called Fixer we're tracking that does some nice little categorization of emails that come through. But we think there's opportunities for AI to insert itself into the personal CRM flows of the CEO and by extension, the chief of staff. And then the last workflow is what I think is the crown jewel of the office of the CEO. And this is the strategic planning process. And today, every company in the world is doing some version of extract opportunities and threats, draft key initiatives, set budgets and targets, communicate it out to the team. You all know the drill. The vast majority of companies are doing that in docs and spreadsheets today. So if you go right down those kind of sub workflows within the workflow of strategic planning, man, I think AI is going to make a huge difference. So where are chiefs of staff today? I think most of them are in rhythm of business stuff, maybe starting to look at some project stuff. Not so much personal CRM, not so much strategic planning, but yeah, that's where my head goes.
Okay, so let's stay on this for a little bit. Can you give us an example, maybe a more specific example of how AI works within the rhythm of business? Like, are we using AI to kind of disseminate like a flow of the rhythm? I know that, we can chat through bots and how we kind of like figure out the follow-ups and different things for specific meetings, but rhythm of business is really the whole rhythm of the company, right? Within that leader's back office with their rhythm. So how do you see AI supporting the rhythm of business right now?
Yeah, right now, I think it's very episodic within the rhythm of business. I think it's very task-based within the rhythm of business. I'll give one simple example. Beginning of 2024, when I asked chief of staff, how are they running their executive staff meeting? Just about all of them had a Google Doc or a OneNote that just kept running on forever, where they just like in this giant doc, they would capture the next steps, they would capture big topics, they would collect agenda items from staff, like chase people down, say, what do you want to talk about? I'm sorry, we don't have time for that. And there's this big manual process. I think that's starting to improve. I think at a minimum, a lot of chiefs of staff are getting help with the note taking. I think some chiefs of staff are getting help with the agenda drafting. I think some chiefs of staff are getting help with the topic forecasting, which is look forward a month and like, what are some of the big things we should start to placehold for agenda items to talk about? So I still think it's very, it's very fragmented. It's very task first in the rhythm of business. But the closest thing at Ambient we've done to build something purpose built for rhythm of business is we've built these sort of like automated folders, cheat sheets for each of your recurring meetings. So at Ambient, if you connect your calendar, we create you this cheat sheet and we compile all the meeting notes from all the history of the meetings. We give you all the open action items. We give you some AI analysis, and then we give you a private vector database that you can chat with this whole body of knowledge within your executive staff. So write me a summary for my board of everything happening that they need to know. Write me a summary for my employees of everything they need to know. And the models can get the tone right. So it's like instrumenting the data and then manipulating, prompting, querying, generating artifacts. And we're trying to automate. So all you have to do is connect your calendar and we can build you those cheat sheets for any ritual within your rhythm of business.
Okay. Yeah. I'm excited to see the progress over the next year in terms of the bigger, more strategic bodies of work versus the tasks or the meetings within each of those items. Which it's incredible to see the AI use on all of those things within each of those major categories. But yeah, it'll be fun to see where we go. And along those same kind of lines, we've had a few people write in with questions. And just a reminder, we've got this Q&A box where you're more than welcome to add any questions for everybody on the call. But there's some questions around, are there any AI tools out there right now that you know of, Lawrence, that are designed to interact with users kind of like a second brain? And we've heard this, this kind of saying a few different times here. But for example, we've probably got a ton of senior executive assistants on this call. Chiefs of staff could use this use case as well. But essentially helping with like task organization, prioritization, creating tasks maps, like I guess you'd mentioned a tool that was helpful within email. Was that 𝗪𝗪? I'm curious,
𝗪𝗪.
kind of some of those senior executive assistant, chief of staff tools that are maybe around task organization and compilation and like flowing it out.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're a daily Ambient user. Like on the task side, I think we've gone the farthest in terms of delivering kind of a prioritization matrix. We use the Eisenhower matrix, drag and drop. So meetings happen, email happen. We pull out the next steps. We help you prioritize them, route them, triage them. You'll never drop another ball again. On the email side, the best that I've seen is 𝗪𝗪, 𝗪𝗪. And what they do, it's actually really simple. They use AI to categorize your email. They create folders overlaid on your Gmail. And I don't know how it works with Outlook, that the highest priority folder is to respond. Those are the ones you actually have to get back to. The lowest folder is spam. And then they have like kind of 5 other folders that are along the range of like FYI and like, so it does the sorting. It's like there's this concept that keeps coming back to me, like this idea of a librarian. And I say this with all respect. I think the chief of staff could be an incredible data librarian to organize data into projects in a way that unlocks AI to be that second brain. So there's still some manual work required just to set AI up for success. So yeah, I think 𝗪𝗪 on the email side. I think Slack's own thing on the Slack side is probably your best bet. And then there's like Microsoft that wants to do it all, but it has to be a Microsoft bot.
Yeah. And you guys, Ambient is advancing every day. So I just saw a comment in our Q&A box here that says, not a question, but a shout out to Lawrence. I've been using Ambient for almost a year and can't say enough about it. It's a powerful game changer. My 2 colleagues just started using it as well and have been blown away by its capabilities. So we will put the link to Ambient in the chat. I agree that in terms of really the use case of C-suite of kind of those rhythm of business, like keeping track of things and the Eisenhower models of what do we need to do, it really is a one-stop shop. It's getting, Lawrence can speak to this so much better than I can, but there's, there's back-end plugs and zaps, right, that can go to your Monday workflows and go to Asana and go to different project management tools out of Ambient. So check it out. We'll put the link in the chat for sure. I want to back out a little bit and ask a couple tips and tricks from you, Lawrence. We've got some folks, and I love this question because it's definitely like a game of just keep trying, but prompting. Okay, so the question here is like, what are Lawrence's tips around prompting to avoid hallucinations, to ensure that ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using is actually answering the question you want it to without adding a bunch of other fluff? Like, do you have some tips and tricks around prompting that you can share with this group?
I do. Do you mind if I share my screen? I have a great visual on this. Is this is this okay? All right.
Yeah, great. Let me see if I can. Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, great. And so this, I have to attribute this, and I don't have the attribution. This is a agency that does AI consulting, but this particular tweet was validated by execs at OpenAI as being the right way to communicate with the reasoning models. And by the reasoning models, I mean O1, I mean 1.5 Gemini. Like, these are the models that we're talking about. So a best practice that's emerging, and this is going to get into a little like agentic, right? You're pointing the thing at a goal as opposed to just asking a quick question. You lay out the goal. You lay out the format that you want the response. Like, do you want a CSV? Do you want rows? Do you want like a children's story? You give it some guardrails, like don't make stuff up. I mean, it sounds like a silly part of thing to put in your prompt, but like just ask it not to hallucinate, right? Some warnings, like make sure it's correct, that it actually exists. And then you give it as much context as you possibly can. They use the word context dump, and we're big believers in this. Like if think about if your prompt is designed to ask the foundation model to draft an email for you. Well, yeah, the model needs to know what the email is about, but the more you can give it in terms of writing style, the history of the relationship, the little nuances that would turn a kind of methodical looking email into something that just came straight from your heart, like that's how to think about it. So I think of that kind of those divisions I just shared. That context dump is usually the one that people are like, they're either too lazy or they skip it. But if you can give more context, you're going to get better responses.
Yep. Yep. I love that. Goal, layout, warnings. Then was the last one context?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay. So for everybody on the chat, we have put together a quick little survey. You'll find it in the chat, just one link up from the bottom. Go ahead and tell us your AI use and your favorite use case for AI and the tool. We will compile all that information and send it out as a recap on this call so everybody can get some ideas and tools of things to check out. And then also so you can kind of understand like where the population on this call sits in terms of their comfort and use with AI, which I think is fascinating. And we'll just keep checking in with this group as we continue to do AI conversations to see how it's progressing over the year. Okay, so Lawrence, I think it wouldn't be an AI call if we didn't talk about confidentiality. So do you mind diving in a little bit into how, most of us on the call probably work for a company, and how do we consider, or how do companies consider the confidentiality risks? How to talk to your leader about, hey, I want to use Ambient. Oh, but I'm concerned about confidentiality. Like, what are the talking points that you can share with this group that we can adopt and learn for others too?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of buckets of risks, and confidentiality is certainly one of them. And there's a couple of flavors of confidentiality risk. So let me walk you through the 5 big risks that you're probably going to have to find solutions for if you want to be the champion of AI within your company. So the first one is hallucination. So the fear that as you start to bring AI into more and more strategic things, it's going to give you something very credible, very truthy sounding that is totally made up. And you just can't have that when you're talking about sort of customer research or strategic planning. So the best you can do with that is be prepared and be educated to talk about how these reasoning models are doing that far less and less. And then there's also ways, and this is more of a vendor question, there's ways to use model B to cross-check model A. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot is vendors using llama, which is an open source model, to cross-check the work of OpenAI or to cross-check the work of Claude. So that's kind of a best practice. It's a little technical, but just know that things are getting better there. The second bucket to worry about is kind of the wrong person gets access. And so you create these summaries, you create these project plans that you have to give AI access, and then you're sharing. And it gets really complicated. Like we work on this stuff under the hood. So the nuances of if I have access to a particular meeting, does that automatically give me access to the full meeting series? Probably not. Does it give me access to the meeting that I was invited to that I didn't go to? Probably yes. But the nuances here, the securities and the permissions and controls, whatever vendor you use better be pretty nuanced with that stuff, because it gets so tricky. You just don't want the wrong person. You don't want to actually share with the org the details of the compensation committee planning meeting, right? For example. The next category of risk is legal. And this is what your general counsel will tell you about. So if you want the power of instrumenting your communications, your calls, your emails, your Slack exchanges, what you don't want is for a leader or a sales leader within your company to say something offensive that could be used in discovery in a lawsuit in 5 years. And your general counsel is going to be all over that. I'm hopeful that that is one that vendors can solve through data redaction and all this kind of stuff on a schedule. I think default sharing settings, I think vendor misbehavior is a thing to look out for. Like a lot of the vendors in the space are product-led growth, they're land and expand, they're trying to blast out to a larger group within your company so they can sell more licenses. I would just look out for that. And then the last thing is the classic information security, data breach. Is this system industrial strength? The good news is the industry has come up with ways to screen for that. So you can ask for things like SOC 2 certifications and documentation, or HIPAA if you're in healthcare. So I feel like of all the buckets of risk, the industry is most familiar with the true information security risks.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think that's what I get questions about a lot is the data. How do we protect the data? Where's the data going? Where's it coming from? Like how does my company, I guess like approach that? And most of us are not technical. We don't have that technical knowledge. And yet often we're in the position of having to speak to the technical piece. Any tips there for kind of the layman user of trying to work with their company on AI adoption?
Oh man, I think you can lean on the industry certifications a little bit. Like that's what they're for, is to like give me, a non-engineer, confidence that this company has a process for what happens if they go down. Like that's what SOC 2 does. It makes you document all of these processes. It makes you think about, as a vendor, all of these things. So I would say lean on the compliance, the certification.
Yeah. And SOC 2 is a compliance regulatory check mark, right? That you have to gain in order to be an approved tool or to have that certification. Is that right? The SOC compliance?
Yeah, there's type 1, type 2. Type 2 is like a snapshot in time. Type 1 is ongoing. It's mostly process stuff, but there are penetration tests associated with it. It's about a 6-month process, 3 to 6 months for a vendor to go through that. It's very intense. It's very painful as a vendor, but for your all sake, it's very good that we go through it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're definitely going to chat a little bit about the environmental impacts of AI, because I've seen a lot of research lately and would just love to hear your thoughts, Lawrence, on how do we approach this brand new technology. But we're going to pause for a second there, because I love this question that just came in. It's so valid, it's so relevant. And I'm going to read it verbatim to you, Lawrence. Today, my CEO called with a deadline quickly approaching. She asked that we remember this time frame for next year so we're not caught off guard again with this deadline next year. Any thoughts on a software or tool or process or best practice with the use of AI to help keep track of deadlines, or remember this for next year when it's literally 12 months away? I mean, my team, we struggle with this too. It's like, what's the best way? We're in PowerPoint, we're in all the things. Like any solutions you found here, Lawrence?
It's the pain is real. I think the answer lies in sort of like an AI-enabled rhythm of business manager, where there's these workflows that happen every year. They should never sneak up on you, like performance reviews, like compensation plan, but it's always a surprise, right? It always catches people by surprise. And so we think the key to this is the calendar. We think that going deeper in the calendar will make this kind of stuff really easy to do. No one's done it yet, so I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you, but just I'd say watch the space. I'll call somebody out. I had a great call with the chief of staff at Zoom. She supports Eric. She's wonderful. Her name is Letty. Incredible. She's an executive. She's like a flat on like public company executive. Yeah. And when she was giving us guidance on what to build at Ambient, she's like, everything has to start with the calendar, and not my calendar. It has to start with Eric's calendar, and then we worry about my calendar. And then we worry about the stuff that's 1 month out, 2 months out, 3 months out. Give me a forward-looking view of what's coming down the pike. So again, I'm just kind of agreeing with you. It's a problem. It's a good idea. Somebody should build it.
Yeah. And we're just not there yet. Like, even when we train our own ChatGPTs for, how we say something, or, they're forgetting a week later or 2 weeks later. And it's like, no, I gave you the rules. Where's it going? So I don't know of a tool yet. I would trust for remind me of this in a year, but, whoever's out there building some AI tools, Lawrence, I think that would be a good one for us.
Yeah. Taylor, if you're listening, put it on the road.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, let's dive into the environmental impacts of AI. I've heard a lot from a lot of different places lately, very recently, last several weeks, around the data coming out with the water usage and just general much greater harm to the environment with the use of AI. Things like 20,000 more consumption of water for ChatGPT queries versus Google. Now, I'm sitting here, and this is kind of my personal belief, where it's like when you have a life-changing tool or life-changing innovation, it's not like it's going to be nearly impossible to just avoid it or to skip using it because of the transformation that it offers you, your company, your business, your production, your efficiency, everything. I am curious, how do we approach this? How do we think about it? Are there trade-offs? Are there things we should be paying attention to? Are there companies out there talking about this in a way that we should be following? How do you think about this as a leader of an AI company?
Yeah, it's a really hard one. The numbers aren't lying. I think 18% of all energy is going to be going to data centers by 2030. And the problem, I'll lay out the problem even more, is that there's such an incredible financial incentive to keep finding performance gains for these foundation models, because I showed you that they're in a race. There's 5, 6, 7 credible companies that are battling to be the intelligence layer for the world. So the stakes are so high. And that one of the easiest way to get performance gains is to just ingest more data, add more parameters, and that requires energy. So that's the rub. There's a intense financial incentive, maybe one of the biggest in the history of the world. It's like being able to take the search market in 2003 if you're Google. Like, what has that meant for that company? It's meant everything. So those are the stakes. So in that environment, we're seeing the only optimism that I have, like, of course, people can take ethical stands. Like I live in San Francisco, and I know people that will not fly on planes because they're concerned about the impact of all that fuel on the world. Like they just don't fly. Like for most people, that's not an option because they want to go see their family. So you can take an ethical stand, but the only thing that gives me hope and confidence is that there is such a renewed focus on being more efficient with energy, on batteries, on power. I think Sam Altman is like deeply engaged with an energy company as well, because he sees this as a thing that could slow down OpenAI. It's the single biggest threat to OpenAI is just lack of enough energy. So like, I know nuclear is on the table in this discussion as well. So I don't know how much any of us can do other than just be aware that this stuff is expensive from an energy perspective.
Yeah, I think the stat I was looking at recently, what was interesting was it sounds like the big 5, big 6, like maybe the highest 60%, the biggest 60% of AI companies are really, really focused on the environmental impacts, and they have the resources to be. But with 40% of the AI market being, the little guys and having less resources to do that, it's still such a major problem. I've thought myself, like, okay, is there a thought process in my mind that I should go to where it's like, I'll Google this instead of ChatGPT. A few months back, I changed, every query I submitted, I moved to ChatGPT to improve and increase my using of AI. And I've gained so much knowledge and efficiency and production and everything from the use of AI. But now I'm thinking, gosh, is there a checklist or something in my head where I should say, oh, should I use Google for that just to do a little bit of my part? Are you thinking about it this way at all, Lawrence?
Yeah, we are. So we actually give people model choices within the OpenAI library of models for tasks that are less intensive. You can run a less intensive model. You can run mini. So there's little things you can do that, like, you don't always have to do the super heavy flush of the toilet. Like, sorry, but like there's different sort of like dials and controls you can put on the tools that at least give people that are thinking about it the options to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if I have any thoughts on this, it's like, I think we should, if it's something that is important to folks on the call, I think we should just stay engaged in the conversation and stay as curious learners and see where things go, and just be aware of the impacts. But I'm still a user for sure, as a business owner.
The last concept here is that when there's immense financial reward that is pulling away from ethical or environmental concerns, you need government to step in. So as a Silicon Valley guy, I shouldn't be saying this, but there's probably needs to be a bit of regulation on this.
Sure.
it happened to the car industry, right? And there's still plenty of cars out there.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Well, before we get to demos, I'm going to kind of dive back in a little bit deeper to the use cases for folks on this call. We've touched on it a little bit, Lawrence, a few different times, but the questions keep coming in. So I want to keep going back here because it's the most relevant to this group. There's two questions I think that I can reference here, but one of them is, I've been on vacation for 10 days. Can you recommend an AI tool that can help me organize the thousands of emails that I've come back to? Maybe by geography, important, urgent, etc. Another question that came in was very similar. What is the best tool to help me organize email? There's so many repetitive tasks that we do. There's so many things to learn quickly that I think an LLM could learn in terms of our priorities and people and how we talk about things and how we categorize things. What's the tool that you would recommend? Is there one? What's coming? What should people be paying attention to here?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 vendors that are
Okay.
working on email. So the first is Read AI. They have email, they have meetings. I haven't been a power user of Read, so I can't really speak, but we've met the founder, like they're a credible team. They've raised a lot of money. I'm sure the product is fine.
Okay.
The second is Fixer. And what they do is they categorize. I don't know if they let you customize the folders. I think you might be able to rename those. But they categorize your email into 7 different buckets. And then for the to respond bucket, which is the most important, they actually draft a response. And the more you use it, the better it gets because it's training on your own voice style. And then the third company that's working on email is Ambient. It's my company. And the way we do it is we do it with an alias. So if you use the CRM like HubSpot and you have that BCC, you can do that with Ambient as well. So if you copy Ambient on an email or forward an email thread to Ambient, sometimes I get stuck on these threads of 35 emails. I think I have one with Nova of like things that I'm supposed to do and I miss stuff. And so I'll forward that to Ambient. It creates a nice tight summary, just like a meeting summary. It pulls out the action items and puts it in my Eisenhower matrix, and I'm not going to forget that stuff. So there's 3 different approaches, but I really like the kind of librarian approach to email, and I think that's something we're going to be leaning into over the next couple of months.
Okay. Okay, great. So Lawrence, I know that you prepared a lot for this call. What have we not talked about for the next 5 minutes before we do demo that you want to bring up?
Yeah, thanks. So there's one big concept that I want to introduce before we get to the demos. And I think there's a tool come from Google called 𝗪𝗶𝘃𝗹𝗹 that demonstrates that concept really well. Is that if 2024 is about tasks, artifacts, like a single meeting, a single email, 2025 is about workflows or folders. And folders sounds really low tech, but let me try and explain what I mean by this is that.
Okay, real quick, Lawrence, also explain what you mean by workflows, because we had a few questions on that.
Yeah, so I think workflows are like it's the workflows. No, workflows are the rituals that make up your job and they have a goal and it's not a task. It's kind of like probably closer to a project than a task. Okay. So I'd like to hear your definition at some point because yours probably.
I agree with that one.
Okay, nice. So the concept I want to introduce is this idea of a smart folder where you are putting the business data that you need to AI to be your second set of eyes in one place. And I'm going to give you an example that's not a business example. It's a very personal example. My mother is going through health issues right now. And there's a lot of blood work that's been done, diagnoses, like documentation about the disease. And so what I did is, like any good technologist, I set up a notebook LM folder. I moved all of these documents into the folder. I shared the folder with my brother and my sister and my father. And there's a help desk, and they can ask questions about anything that's happening with my mother. It goes more. You can create a podcast where AI podcasters talk in it. Like this is a consumer-facing tool, so you have to be careful with business data. Discuss the condition and ask human questions and debate it. And it's been such a lifesaver for my family because I know these concepts because I've read every one of these damn diagnoses. But like to have an AI just explain it, generate summaries, like write up, answer questions. It doesn't sleep. It's available 24/7. It's been so powerful. So replace my mother's health condition with any strategic project in your company. Planning a holiday party, planning an offsite, check out Jared's company, planning opening a new office, getting an M&A, getting a financing done. We're going through a financing process right now. Every single pitch I'm putting into an Ambient folder, and I'm asking questions. There's 35 hours of financing pitches in there. Why are people passing on this deal? What are 3 things I can do to be a better presenter? Like, these are the kinds of questions you can ask AI, but somebody has to organize the data. So the single biggest concept I want to leave you with is that this librarian role, this ability to kind of unleash AI to be more strategic for you, to be your second brain. I think that's a skill set that's really interesting. And Taylor's going to show it to you with 𝗪𝗵𝘁, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but it's cool.
Okay. I was going to ask for a little bit more like tie-in then. So with 𝗪𝗵𝘁 being the AI tool that sits there with your folder that organizes and creates summaries that you can ask questions to for feedback. Got it. Okay. That'd be cool to see for sure. Well, let's see. A couple things real quick for everybody on the call. We're going to go into a few demos. I think you have 3 tools, or I think you wanted to 2 tools to talk about. Great. We will absolutely be sharing this recording. So don't worry for everybody asking if we're going to get the recording. Yes, you are. Our team will do our best to share some of the key concepts as well within that email. We'll make sure that you've got access to, Lawrence and Ambient and all the things that as much as we can that we've talked about on this call as well. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Lawrence and Taylor. Taylor is the other co-founder at Ambient. So hi, Taylor, and I'll let you 2 take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie.
Nice.
Taylor, over to you.
Awesome. So I have 2.5 things I want to show. We talked a bit about this concept of reasoning. I want to show you what that means in practice. So you're probably familiar with ChatGPT's interface. I'm interfacing with their 4.0 model, which is kind of their standard model. And I'm going to run through an example. This is a logic puzzle. I want to show you a contrast, compare and contrast. The standard model approach without a ton of reasoning is going to go straight to an answer. And this is it generating what sounds and looks very convincing. And it's trying to parcel out what the right answer is to this puzzle. The answer it came up with is 97, looks like. There it's processing through a few more examples. 96, okay. So not to burst the bubble, the real answer is 98. And I want to show you what it looks like to run the same question using 𝗪1. 𝗪1 is their reasoning model. And I asked this question and it took 3 minutes to think of the answer. And it actually shows you detail by detail, what is it thinking? And it's going through different scenarios. It's checking against the answer. I ran this ahead of time because I knew it was going to take a while. And it got to 98, which is the answer. So this is the power of giving the models more time to think at the point of question. It's not pre-trained on this problem, hence why it can't immediately respond with the answer. This is that next kind of 2025 wave. Now, what can you do with reasoning as a capability? This is something we think about every day at Ambient. I want to shift gears to 𝗪𝗵𝘁. So this is the chat with your documents concept. And so the idea when you start up a new notebook in 𝗪𝗵𝘁, this is a Google product, it's a consumer product, so we don't use this for production data. But I'm going to run through an example where I'm actually going to use this to help craft some elements of an offsite. I cannot plan the logistics piece. Talk to Jared. He's got a company that does that. But I'm going to build out a project, a notebook, and what I've done is I've compiled a bunch of example data. So it's incredibly time intensive to be that librarian. I've pretended that I've captured all of our financial information, past agendas, input from leaders. We all know this takes a lot of time to wrangle. I'm going to drag and drop that data into this notebook. And so now I have a grounded ChatGPT-like experience with the specific artifacts, these specific documents. So I can say, draft me an agenda for offsite taking into account last year. And while I do that, I'm also going to click on a kind of fun example feature that really is what took 𝗪𝗵𝘁 off on social media, is their ability to generate an AI-powered podcast. So I'm going to let that run in the background. And so very quickly, I can go from passing context, aggregating the right amount of information, to feed the model so that I can start to get some work done. In this case, I'm working on drafting that agenda. This is still requiring a lot of time to gather the information, compile it. It's a very basic prompt I asked, but now I'm able to start to get into some more detailed work around that planning. While this is generating a podcast, I'm going to show you the third tool, and this is Ambient. So our take on chat with your documents, we call it projects. We use projects for strategic initiatives. We use it to track key relationships. I'm actually going to go into one of the key rhythm of business workflows, which is keeping the C-suite, especially the CEO, prepped and aware of what's happening across the business. We talk to a lot of chiefs that have to go out and scour the business to put together that weekly recap. What our projects do is we allow you to build, just like 𝗪𝗵𝘁, a grounded chat experience. This is our business data. And I'm going to open up AI chat. We are running OpenAI's 4.0 model. And I'm going to run one of my prompts. I'll show you what the prompt looks like. So C-suite weekly digest. I'm defining the prompt. I'm pretending that I want the model to think it's a 12 out of 10 chief of staff. Here's the goal. Here's how I want it to think about the problem that I'm asking. Here are the requirements. And here's an example. So thinking about that what composes a good prompt, breaking it down into these chunks has a lot of impact and positive impact on the output. So I'm going to actually run this live. And so what the project does is it looks across the business data. This is a private vector database. I just initiated my prompt that I saved into Ambient. It's now analyzing the dozens of hours of conversational data, transcription data, emails. We're going to be adding the ability to incorporate documents as well. And this is pulling together the top 5 things that my CEO, my principal needs to know. It's pulling together opportunities and threats across the business that week. And this is an incredible tool to obviously help orient the business around what's going on a day-to-day basis. Now,
Taylor, can you send that to me? That stuff looks important. Can you send that to me when we're done?
I will. And it looks like our podcast is not done cooking yet. So maybe I will pass it back to you, Maggie, because I know we're running up on time.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. So Taylor, strength of Ambient versus 𝗪𝗵𝘁, like the two different use cases.
Yeah, 𝗪𝗵𝘁 only works with certain types of data, mainly text-based data, PDFs, and Google Slides and Google Sheets. It does not incorporate or tie directly into the operating data automatically. So what we do at Ambient, we have 3 assistants. We have an email assistant, a meetings assistant, and a chat assistant. And our assistant's job is to go out, capture and map the business data, give our customers value on just AI note-taking, email summarization, all the stuff that Lawrence mentioned. But the give-get for the C-suite is this ability to start to see across the business. And so this report that I was able to generate very quickly would obviously take a lot of time to compile. I'd have to be in a lot of meetings that I don't really want to be in. But because we're instrumenting our business, this is the give-get. So you let your team members benefit from these assistants on a day-to-day, helping you keep on track, task extraction, summarization. But the C-suite, the executives, leadership get to have that visibility. And where this is going is we want to tie what's happening on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis to the company's strategy, to the company's objectives, and then start to close those loops.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Purpose-built versus kind of a fun tool to play with.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I think the last thing I'm going to share briefly for everybody who's still on the call is a question we've been getting in the chat that's really about kind of starting use with, let's say, ChatGPT or pick an LLM, okay? And the use case here could be something that a lot of us have run into, which is feedback from a team offsite or feedback from an all hands or a webinar. Can ChatGPT or can something help me organize this information? And my answer to you as a layman AI user is absolutely yes. Put that information into an LLM. Ask for what you want. If it doesn't come back quite the way you want, you don't understand it, or if it changed things, that's learning for you. Tell it not to change anything. Keep each quote verbatim how it gives it. You can tell ChatGPT to organize your data within 2 columns. You can ask for name in one column, feedback in another. Play around with it. Use ChatGPT or another LLM to help you understand how you can synthesize synthesize data, and then you will naturally become more understanding of the different use cases. So that's the challenge, is to get out there and play around with a few things. Any final words? We're a minute over, but anything else finally from you, Lawrence? Thank you so much for being on, to both Lawrence and Taylor. We really, really appreciate your time.
You're on mute,
on mute.
Lawrence.
Sorry. My last comment is that I wrote an article basically saying why I believe the chief of staff will be the last woman or man standing in the age of AI. I believe AI is coming for jobs. It's going to happen. All the things we talked about are part of the reason why. I believe that you all are well positioned to just flex up. Like if someone takes away your rhythm of business responsibilities, go work on the M&A deal. Go work on other of the CEO projects. So some of the stuff we're talking about is scary. Don't be scared. Keep flexing up, lean into the tools, and let's have a great 2025.
I love it. Well, thanks for kicking off with our first Nova Chat, everybody. Check us out, Ambient, Nova Chief of Staff. We have a survey at the end. We'd love to hear from you, and we will absolutely send this recording out, as well as a bunch of things that we've heard about on the call, access to all of us, and you can find all of this on Nova Chief of Staff's website as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Buddy. Bye.